Well, we'll go ahead and get started with introductions and kind of the format and other pieces. You can't see me because the PowerPoint's up, but my name is Clarissa Alcantara, and I work in the Office of Lifelong Faith Formation in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And I'm part of the ministry support team in the Office of Lifelong Faith Formation. And we're super happy and glad to be hosting a virtual safe environment guideline kind of update and training if you haven't had an opportunity to do this before. This is the first of several webinars we are producing to keep you and those at the parishes informed of kind of just some changes, and if you have questions that you need to work out or have a better understanding of, that's kind of why we're here. With us this morning is Myra Flores, Mary Jane Dorr, and Deacon Dan Welter, and they're going to take us through an opening prayer and a little bit about the presentation. A couple notes for you today. If you do have questions at any point during this presentation, please type them in the chat. Our speakers will address the questions at the end of the call. And I know sometimes for me, I will forget a question unless I write it down. So please use the chat for that. The other thing is we're going to put the documents in the chat. And so when you come away from this webinar, know that the documents can be downloaded from the chat. The documents, as well as a link to the recording of this video, will be sent out. Give us a couple days to get it together, though. We usually do a little bit of editing, and then we'll post it on our YouTube channel, and then the link will be sent around, and you can feel free to share that with other catechists or leaders at the parish. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and start with opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deacon Dan Welter, the Chancellor for the Archdiocese, and I'm pleased to be with you today. So we begin as we do all good things in prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of all, our work is constant. The problems of the afflicted continue, so our work continues. Help us to remember that everyone can do something beautiful by reaching out to those who need our assistance. Bless this day and all our days with light and hope. Fill our hearts with your love and compassion, our minds with an awareness of your constant presence, and our bodies with strength, health, and energy. Help us to do ordinary things with extraordinary love, to work for the good of those whom we meet each day. Help us to serve them with kindness, dignity, and cheerfulness, so that at the end of the day, they too might know you better. Guide our footsteps along your simple path, knowing that the fruit of silence is prayer, the fruit of prayer is faith, the fruit of faith is love, the fruit of love is service, and the fruit of service is peace. Bless our conversation this day, and may our work bear fruit in the lives of the men and women we are privileged to serve. We ask all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Just one quick thing before you're going to hear from Mary Jane and from Myra. I am here kind of as the diversity candidate for this triumvirate, but I would say to you that these are not only experts here in the diocese, but people who are recognized throughout the country as experts. The program they're going to be presenting to you today is one that is a model for people throughout the country and in other dioceses. We're very fortunate to have people of this caliber working for us here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And on behalf of the Cardinal and all others, we thank them for what they do and all of you for what you are doing here today. And I turn it back to our moderator.
Thanks, Deacon Dan.
Thank you.
I will start. Can you, okay, first off, welcome to this presentation. Thank you for being here. Myra and I really believe that some of the confusion is more over how to connect the dots between the training that you have received through Protecting God's Children and the bulletins that you have read. The policies of the Archdiocese pretty much spell out how we work with children. And we know you know that. So it's really a matter of let's help you connect the dots so that you can see how the policies that are in the the interim guidelines really flow together. Can you go back one slide? Thank you. This is the Office for the Protection of Children and Youth. We do everything from victim assistance, Tom Therile's assistance ministry. Leah McCluskey is the Office for Child Abuse Investigation and Reviews. All allegations go through Leah. She puts them through the process of the Archdiocese. Maura Riley is the Prayer and Penance program. She supervises the men who are on prayer and penance. Myra Flores, our Safe Environment Coordinator, probably has the hardest job because it's Myra, Amy, and Dina who work with 300 parishes and 200 schools, getting 15,000 people in compliance and 45,000 volunteers, 15,000 employees. So they have a huge job and they have seen it all. And I put a lot of faith in what Myra's opinions are. It is from years of experience. If you need something, do not hesitate to contact any one of these people to help you. If you don't know who it is, give Marciela or Dina Garcia a phone call and they will direct you to the right person. Next slide. One of the concerns that I read over and over in the emails that came up is, why did this take so long to get out? And there are two reasons for that. One is nothing changed. So we didn't see that there was a big need to tell you nothing changed. The child protection policies that the Archdiocese follows are good, whether you are meeting in person or whether you are meeting through Zoom. The one-on-one is strictly regulated, always has been. The group is regulated, always has been. So whether you're in a classroom or a Zoom meeting, most of the principles of safe environment are in force. So because there was some confusion in the beginning, we sent everybody the safe environment policies, being safe in the time of COVID, and I think that's included with your materials. And that kind of helps people take the 5 steps, know the warning signs, control access, monitor activity, be aware of children and minors' behavior, communicate your concerns. We ran those through a virtual setting and very little changed. But you wanted a policy, so we went through the policy process, and that is 8 stages. It starts with the identification of the problem and ends with the promulgation of a new policy. The steps I've listed are real shorthand of what happens. And you know, in any bureaucracy, and I say that word nicely, there are steps, and it takes time to get it to the chancellor, to have the chancellor review it, submit it to the Archbishop, the Episcopal Council, and in the Administrative or Government Council, have them comment on it, get them back to him. He develops a policy, it's presented to another board. These all take weeks, if not months, to go through. So this is the policy of how a policy in the Archdiocese gets developed, and it does take time, and we certainly apologize that it might have taken too much time, but we really didn't think there were that many changes. So I would imagine.
If I may,
Yes.
and we don't expect you to know every policy that we have for safe environment. We don't expect you to be able to cite it or recite it. What we do want you to know is that these 8 stages, when Mary Jane talks about changes, really what the changes did was reinforce, was to shore up those policies that were already in place for safe environment. We really believe that we have a foundation that's been created over years, that has evolved, that have been reinforced and strengthened by the leadership. So that when we talk about changes, it was more about reinforcing what's already there rather than changing anything that would stop you from ministry, that would prevent you from being there and being a professional minister. And so it wasn't about drastic changes that you had to stop to prevent you from ministry. It was really about looking at what was already there and enhancing them, reinforcing them, making them stronger so that the safe environment that's created is stronger.
Thank you. See, she knows everything. Next slide. We're starting from this foundation. Religious education and youth ministry are both a communal faith experience among peers and trusted adults and a partnership with families. How do you see your youth ministry program? What part do you play in developing that communal faith experience? You're one of the trusted adults. The peers are your students, and their behavior toward each other and toward you are important. And this is it's really a formal process. It's a formal relationship between a student and a teacher with as much softness as you want. It's not a law school relationship between teacher and student where they just fire questions at you. That's an old TV show. Or you're more approachable to them. You're part of their life. You work with them. But it's also a partnership with families. We don't take the place of family status. We can't have conversations with our students that families don't know about. And this, I suspect, is a real tricky line to follow in some of the youth ministry programs in the upper grades. But it's really important. You are in partnership with parents to create a strong faith formation opportunities in a safe environment, whether you do that in person or virtually through a Zoom. Anything else, Myra?
Well, the one thing you are a parish sponsored program. And so the pastor has to be involved, as I'm sure you involve him. And it's also because it's a parish sponsored program that the community should be celebrating what you should be a part of why you're doing this, that you're bringing young people, youth, into this already established community to build on it, to build this faith formation in the child that's going to be part of this community. So it is a communal faith experience. So just wanted to add that.
Next, the safe environment piece of it, our guidelines, if you will, are we can protect minors by modeling professional safe behavior always. Our behavior needs to be so different from an offender's behavior that when an offender crosses a line, the student, the minor, immediately it's triggered with what's going on. That is a key part of how we keep children safe. It is a key part of why having students go through safe environment training of their own every year, every student, so that they learn the warning signs they need to pay attention to. So that if they come across somebody behaving that way, their radar goes off, they say stop. Your behavior needs to be completely different from an offender's. Otherwise, you confuse them and they don't know which person is now safe. We believe well-informed, caring adults can protect children. And we are not talking about protecting children from priests. We are talking about protecting children from any adult in their circle that is trying to mean them harm. If we follow the learnings of protecting God's children and our code of conduct, we have a better idea of what we have to do. Again, your behavior needs to be distinctly different from the offender's behavior. You need to keep your professional role distinctly different from your personal role. This is why we're not sharing Facebook pages. If you have a personal Facebook page, you have no business friending a student in your program. No business. If the parish has a Facebook page, friend them there. That is the relationship is stemmed through the parish, not personality. Open, transparent, detectable communication is what keeps everyone safe. The students are learning year after year that you don't keep secrets. If an adult tells you to keep a secret, that is a warning sign. You need to pay attention to it. We can't ask them to do anything else. We have to be open, transparent, detectable. So I see a lot of questions in the emails about personal cell phones and personal emails. They're completely inappropriate in a youth ministry, religious ed, professional relationship between a teacher and a student. How we get around that, I think, is the hard part. What do? The parish is closed. I don't have a landline. All I have is my cell phone. We need to come up with an understanding of how we can work around that. And I think between Myra and I and Deacon Dan, we can help you figure that out. Next slide. Safe environment is also about fostering meaningful, appropriate relationships. The relationship between teacher and student in the elementary schools is really clear. They're 20-year age difference. When you start getting teachers and high schools together, the age difference can shrink to 4 years. And I remember early on in my safe environment career, we were talking to parishes about proper behavior between people. And her response was, "Are you kidding? We used to date our high school teachers." That's not acceptable. It wasn't acceptable back then. It's not acceptable in the 21st century. So if you have a youth minister who is 19 and they are working with the 17-year-old youth ministry group, that 19-year-old has to pay very close attention to that professional relationship. It is not a dating scene. My advice is, if somebody is in the youth ministry program for years and a great kid, but he graduated from high school, he's in college, wants to come back and be the youth minister at 19, that's a big no in my book. You need to be at least 2 years away from the group you're going to mentor or be in charge of, just to make sure those roles are clearly defined. And he's not a fun guy. Oh, we had so much fun with him. Remember, we would do this and that. Well, he's in a different role now. He can't do that. So it's really important that the appropriate relationships are established early on, ensuring the safety of the students and avoiding the appearance of indiscretion. It's not okay for the 19-year-old youth minister, religious ed teacher to date the 17-year-old student. It is the appearance of indiscretion. No one-on-one conversations without knowledge of the parent. In a classroom setting, you have 15, 25, 30 kids, one teacher. You have one-on-one conversations in that classroom all the time, but they are within earshot and visible by everybody else in that classroom. That's what protects both children, students, and teachers. How do you do that virtually? Pretty much the same way. You don't have, well, let's go offline and have this conversation. Don't do that. It's nothing, you should not be speaking about anything that can't be shared in public. That's your role as youth minister, teacher, mentor in a religious setting. So it's up to
Mary Jane, one of the things I want to add to that part, because I hear what you're saying, and I also want to reinforce that you cannot promise confidentiality to a young person. You cannot promise that anything that is said to you about a parent or anything can be held confidentiality. What if they're disclosing some kind of abuse? What if they're disclosing something and you've just promised confidentiality? You've put yourself in a situation where then you cannot act on that, and you have to. You are not mandated reporters by state law, but by archdiocesan policy, we want you to take mandated reporter training so that you understand the responsibilities of reporting any kind of suspicion of abuse or neglect or in any way. So please do not think that you can ensure confidentiality. That is not something that is within your role in any way. I understand that sometimes with youth ministry or with religious ed, when you give the children's training, they may come to you as a trusted adult with some issue that they want to sort of bounce off of you before they may go to a parent or something. That is one thing, to have somebody come to you and say, well, this is what's going on in my life. And then what do you think? Because I want to now talk to my parent. That doesn't absolve you from your responsibility to report anything if it comes to your knowledge. And so you cannot promise confidentiality.
And under the law, there is also the issue, there is only very few people who are properly credentialed who have any kind of right to that confidentiality. It is priest penitent in the sacramental sense. It is lawyer and client. But beyond that, or doctor patient, and beyond that, it doesn't apply. We are not credentialed in that area.
And I think knowing that helps us to maintain and model healthy boundaries. You're a teacher. Next slide. What's still the same, whether you're virtual or one more back. Whether you're virtual or in person, the adult facilitator is in compliance with all requirements prior to serving. There's good reason for that. You need to know our code of conduct. You need to know our policies. You need to know our procedures. You need to know the 5 steps of protecting children that comes through the Protecting God's Children training. You need to know that.
All you need to know. And you need to know the church's commitment, the archdiocese's commitment to safe environment. This is no longer, this was never meant to be a response to a crisis in 2002. Many of the young people who you are working with right now may not have even been born at the time that the crisis happened in the church. Okay. But certainly the commitment that we have as a church, as an archdiocese, to create a safe environment is part of a ministry of protecting children and youth. And it is the Cardinal's commitment to this ministry that has these policies that are shored up, that has this safe environment. We have told our parents and our guardians that if you trust us with your children, we're going to make sure that anybody that has access to them has been screened, has been trained, has the understanding of this commitment so that they are part of this ministry, that they are another trusted adult that can have access to children. So it's very important that they have that prior to serving, because if they can't do that, we don't want them.
If they don't have the time, and we hear that a lot, nobody has time for this. Well, then they don't have time to be a part of our program. Classes, sessions, meetings, whatever they're called, are publicized for parents and parish staff so everybody knows when the meeting is. Maintain attendance. We had a question about that came up. Religious ed, youth ministry, any church-sponsored function in a training situation, in a formation situation, needs to maintain attendance. And you need to share your attendance list of that day or that month or that year with somebody in the parish, either the DRE, maybe there's a youth minister who is in charge of that, but you should maintain attendance. That is a big deal. If somebody drops the student off and says, see you at 9 o'clock, and instead of going in the building, he goes around the back, meets his friends, and they go off someplace, parents need to know they did not show up. That is something that that is an expectation that you're going to tell me if my kid is not there when he said he was going there. It just has to be that way.
And attendance is also not just in person, but virtual.
Right. Consider a monthly update to parents, though I know all of you read faithfully the OPCY's monthly newsletter. It's full of information. I just find that it's a good way to put in writing. And if somebody is asking a question, here it is. Here's this, it's in this month's, it was in 2 months ago. Let me get you a copy of that. All of our newsletters are on Izzy. They're there for anybody. They're sent out through the Arch link to just help people remember what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to create safe environments with healthy people to keep our children safe. Next page. How remote learning is different. The students are in their homes instead of in front of you. The same, all relationships are professional. All boundaries are respected. All child protection procedures apply. There is nothing new in the time of COVID that is not in place, that wasn't in place in January. It's the same principles. They might have to be applied differently. And that's where I think we can help you connect the dots between what you're doing and what you know. It's the isolation is real. And I live by myself with a cat in a small apartment, and 24/7 in here is very isolating. I get out as much as I can safely, walk around the block, do something, a lot more Zoom meetings, but those situations for kids, for youth that are living in less than ideal situations to start with, is something that we can be aware, and that's where you can help. What are you seeing in your Zoom meeting? Is somebody acting scared? We had one question about what if a student doesn't turn on their camera? I kind of equated this to what if that student in real time or in a real classroom would not put their phone away. You would not say, oh, well, you would respond to that. If it were me and I had a Zoom class and somebody did not turn their camera on, I would kick them out of the meeting and let parents know they did not attend because they weren't attending. They're whatever they're doing with their camera off, why can't the camera be on? If it's a situation where I can't show you what's happening in my home, in my background, then maybe it's a cause for concern and a call needs to be made to help that student. But to say, what do I do if they don't turn the camera on? What would you do if they wouldn't put their phone away? It's kind of the same situation, unless I'm totally misrepresenting it.
At the same time, you want to set up expectations. You want to tell the kids, okay, we're going to have a Zoom meeting. I'm going to take attendance. Your parents are going to be aware of this attendance. And we are going to expect all cameras on. So I want you to be dressed up as you would coming to the parish. And I want you to be present. So those are the kind of things. Those unspoken expectations are what could get us into trouble. So always be open and communicating what the expectations are so there are no surprises when you say, sorry, we told you that we wanted your camera on. So therefore, could you please turn it on, or we'll see you next time when you can turn it on. And then follow up after to see why they weren't able to turn it on.
Right, and there may be a reason.
Right.
But I think it's important that we deal with that. Let's go to our next slide, is creating a secure situation. And I think some of the questions that are coming up are really good ones, and they might be answered by the next couple presentations. If not, they will be, we'll talk about them at the end, because I think they're the important issues that we have to deal with. Create a secure situation in your Zoom meeting. Nothing worse than a Zoom bomb. And we've had 2 or 3 meetings that were Zoom bombed with absolutely egregious behavior. There was another one where an adult had to, I think he quit his job because what he Zoom bombed was so egregious. Oh, I thought my camera was off, whatever. Anyway, enable the waiting room so that you can see who's in it. Have a roster of participants so you know who to expect. Ensure your host knows how to do it, and don't make me the host sometimes. It's like, but become familiar with Zoom or Teams or whatever you're going to use. Disable the screen sharing unless approved by hosts. Helps avoid the Zoom bombs. If somebody is Zoom bombing, they can't just share it with everybody. Enable hosts to mute participants. That's key too. And I won't go there. It's just, you need to be in control of what people are saying. Considering having participants blur their background. I don't know what's on kids' walls these days. I don't know what's going on in families, but I can imagine sometimes the background just could be distracting. So, look at that, consider why, be open with the person who's asking for that or not asking for it, and decide. Disable all recording features so that you are in control of what's recorded, not the student. So the student can't record other people and then post that someplace else. So you want to be in control of the recording if it's recorded. And I've heard a conversation back and forth about, well, if it's recorded, we have proof of what was said. It's like, you do. And if you need that, then maybe that's something Deacon Dan can help us with legally. What's the issue on recording, and should they be recording so that you have that record, or they should not be recorded for some other reasons? I don't know.
With recording, it would be a case that all parties need to know they're being recorded, and they have to agree to be recorded. And if you don't have unanimity, you don't record.
Okay. Thank you. So you don't want a stray person to do that because he's going to make fun of one of the people in the group. Social media, our next slide. Again, the guidelines haven't changed. Follow the procedures. There needs to be a wall between your professional role and your private life, and that needs to be protected and be as strong as it can be. Too often in the 21st century, this is the way we socialize. And when you're in a lockdown like we are now, it's not a lockdown really, but we're stuck. It's one of the few ways we can socialize and be accepted by our peers and be a part of the life that we used to know. So just when you do that, make sure you're the adult in the situation and you hold that role. That if kids want to get together on their own, Monday afternoon and carry on about whatever it is happened that day, that's fine. That has nothing to do with our social media. You're not part of their gabfest, their gossip situation. Your role is the teacher, the youth minister, the adult, holding out those professional responsibilities. Myra, did you have more about that?
Yeah, and this is a generation that has never been without cell phones, that has never been without a cell phone in their pocket to record everything or take a picture of everything. So it's part of your formation with them. At pre-COVID, I always warned against relationships and remote relationships, thinking that it's better because with social media, when you tweet something or you text something or something like that, you don't see the reaction of the person who's going to be receiving that kind of a message. So that's where some damage can happen, whether inadvertently or maybe intentional, you never know. But so you as the person who is in a formation role, with these young people, with these minors. It's really important that you use it wisely, but also use it to remind these young people how important it is to be responsible on social media. And that's how you do it, by modeling the behaviors you want to see in them.
Next slide is our direct communication. The communication that we have with parents and our students needs to be direct. It needs to be transparent. It needs to be detectable. Essentially, all text messages are detectable. Anybody can copy a text and send it to anybody else. So watch yourself. Keep updated records of parent contact information. I realize this has been a problem. Maybe for this year that we've just started, there's a different way to collect parent information. Registration. How did you do registration this year for these programs? Make sure you've collected the parent contact information as well, the student information. Communicate regularly with the parents regarding the religious ed and youth ministry activities. Let them know what's going on. Maintain that open communication with parents regarding any concerns for a minor. I can imagine there are a lot of concerns that you might have with your students in this time. They could be suffering depression, the isolation, the family could be in a volatile situation. What do? You're the trusted adult in the situation. You have to follow the professional activities of that. If you are concerned about somebody, contact parents, contact DCFS. If it rises to that level where you suspect abuse, then your responsibility is to get help for them by contacting DCFS, not taking it upon yourself to help them deal with that situation. Ensure minors, and Myra talked about this briefly, is that you won't hesitate to share information with parents. That your role is not the favorite and confidant who will keep secrets because I really need some help because she knows how my mother is. Whatever that situation is, that's not you. You're the representative of the church in a faith development formation role, not confidant. You have to be able to share that. They need to know that you will share that information that needs to be shared. And I'm not saying every little thing, of course, but that's the general principle.
Understand with DCFS, you can report that without having to give attribution to yourself. You report what you have seen, they take it from there. But again, with these situations, if you suspect something, go to DCFS first, then go to the parish.
And the thing with DCFS that a lot of people don't understand is their role is not to break up the family. Their role is to stop the abuse. And that's what you want to do. Many times, you know, we get stuck. We want to be good people. We want to be the trusted adult. But to be a trusted adult, to be pastoral, is to refer out to people who are in an expert position, in a professional position, to help with the situation. There are so many outside stressors going on right now to the family with finance and COVID and the politics and everything that's going on. So there's these competing stressors. And so there is a lot going on in the family. So a child may need to talk to you, may need to confide in you. But given what they're confiding in you, you might have to make these kind of difficult phone calls. And it's not, you shouldn't feel guilty about trying to stop any kind of abuse. That is not, it's not violating confidence. It's helping the child.
And it's not yours to judge. If you want to judge, get on the ballot. But until that time, make sure you start to report when you see something and it concerns you.
Next, we're going to talk about boundaries. The next slide. Boundaries are a big thing with OPCY. It's our code of conduct speaks a lot about boundaries, what you can and cannot do as an adult member of the parish. If set reasonable hours first. You're not available 24/7. The Cardinal's not available 24/7. I'm not available 24/7. There's no reason anybody needs to be available 24/7. Don't answer texts, calls, messages from students or youth or parents outside those hours. Protect your time. Be aware of your mental health. How are you dealing with the COVID and the isolation and having to deal with their isolation? Don't make their problems your problems. Be aware of your motivations. Be aware of your professional limitations. And both Deacon Dan and Myra have touched on this. You're not a priest, so that you don't have that confidentiality. You're not a psychologist. You're not a therapist. You're not a mental health professional in any way. So that's not your role. You can identify people who might be able to help somebody, and that might be your best bet, is to refer them to somebody you know can help. And hopefully it's not just DCFS. Catholic Charities has some programs that can help kids. So be aware of your professional limitations. You cannot solve all the problems that the kids are bringing with them. And again, you cannot promise confidentiality if you have one-on-one hard conversations. And I'm not denying that they are hard conversations. If you're speaking with a 16-year-old who's having some big issues, your best opportunity to help might be to refer them to somebody else, or to say, let me find somebody who you can talk to about this. What if, and explore options that way. Anything else, Myra?
No, I think you've touched on all that.
The additional requirements, the next slide, for Zooming, or religious said in a Zoom in a COVID world. If a one-on-one meeting with a minor on the parish site was necessary, you could certainly have one. Meet me in the classroom, meet me in the office, but the way that was set up should have been, there are other people around. Anybody could walk into this room at any minute. Everybody passing by can see that I'm in a meeting with one person. That makes it open and transparent. So you have to find, how do I do that in a Zoom meeting? Youth ministers, and I think this is one of the big issues, you don't meet one-on-one with a minor off-site. Let's go down to Starbucks and talk about it. That's not appropriate. It's not safe. It's not a safe modeling. And this is my big thing. You're not modeling safe behavior if you do that. So you want to say, I know you're having a hard time. I understand you have some questions. We can meet in my office. Doors open, everybody's around. However you want to deal with that. So virtual meetings are the same. You don't have a Zoom one-on-one with somebody because you didn't go to a Starbucks one-on-one with somebody. So if you're going to have a meeting, whether it's in Zoom or whether it's in person, it's in a public build. It's on site of the parish. That's where your ministry is taking place. It's in a place where people know you're there. The door is open. They can see you. They can see that nothing is happening. And that I can't underline that enough.
And in most of our settings today, you'll have windows in the door.
Yeah.
Please do not cover it with your coat. That's one of my pet peeves, and I see that at the archdiocesan centers and every place else. The window is there for a purpose. Please respect that purpose.
And we're trying to make sure that kids see in you what they should see in every adult. That they, when you say, no, that's not really a good idea for us to be meeting in Starbucks, like Mary J says. It's better that we talk during the session. Turn on your camera. I want to see your face. I want to be able to see that you're happy today, or whatever it is. But what we're trying to do is that in you, they'll see the kind of behaviors that they should expect in all adults who want to work with them or who want to engage with them.
We have a couple of questions that I think we're gonna get to. They're very good questions, and they really relate to what we're talking about, and I think most of them come with their own answer. So the next page is just remember these few things. Minors should be encouraged to seek guidance from their parents, from their guardians, from their trusted adults in their family, not from you. If a minor is making you uncomfortable with the level of disclosure, if that's too much information, we shut that down. I know this is important to you, but I don't think I'm the right person to be sharing with it. Gently ask if you can bring someone else in. There's somebody more qualified into this conversation. We don't want to be in the position where we get in between a minor and their parents. That can cause all kinds of difficult situations. We know you want to be there, to be the guide, to be the friend with the minor, but there are some times when that's just inappropriate. I go back to when you're trying to figure out a situation, what would you want to have happen to your children? If this person was your young adult or teenager or even younger, how would you want an adult to respond? How would you want that person to be kept safe? What kind of modeling would you like there to be so that they become to trust their instincts about who I can and cannot talk to, who I should and should not talk to? The next page. I don't know how many of the people in the audience are youth ministers who have volunteers underneath them, or are DREs who have catechists and others underneath them. But who's ever in charge of the program is responsible for the actions of the volunteers. So we had a couple questions about, does everybody need to be in compliance? Yes. If you are a volunteer working with students with a minor, everybody in that role needs to be in compliance. You need to have a Virtus account. If you're new to the position, to volunteering, going on to Virtus and creating an account will automatically get the online training assigned. You don't have to go to trainings anymore. They have been stopped since COVID is not allowing large groups of people to get together. So all of our training is online. Virtus is a one-step process. You create the account, the training will be assigned, the background check information will be asked for, you'll be asked to read and sign the code of conduct and all the other documents that are important to working with minors. Adhere to that code of conduct. Adhere to all the policies of the Archdiocese. It's to keep everybody safe, you and the students that you work with. And I know that's what everybody wants. Nobody listening to this is trying to figure out how I can get around it so that I can harm a child. I know that. So let's work together here and figure out what's the best way to model professional behavior for you so that you have the respect of the people you are teaching and they are more likely to understand what you're saying, sharing that faith with them. And it's also to help them identify the behavior of safe adults.
And for those, you are a part of a parish staff. You are a member of the parish staff. And so as part of the parish staff, look for your site administrator. There's a site administrator at the parish whose responsibility is to help the pastor make sure that all compliance is met for any clergy, employee, or volunteer. So work with your site administrator on making sure that your volunteers, the volunteers that are going to have access to your students and to your participants, that they have met all compliance. And that way, as part of that parish staff, you are meeting that responsibility as part of the parish staff to make sure that the site administrator is aware of who your volunteers are and who your coordinators are, so that the right compliance requirement is assigned to that person and it's met before they start.
The bottom line with so much of what we're talking about here today is keeping that boundary between your professional ministerial life and your personal life. And some of it may require that you carry 2 telephones. That's just the nature of what has to happen. A lot of us have to do that to keep those 2 lives separate and apart. It's not a great burden today, given the size of the phones that we have, but these things have to be thought through and have to be actualized on within the parish and for your own protection and for the protection of those who you minister to.
Anything else before we start looking at the questions? I don't know about the camera issue, and I don't know if we want to, if that's something to say, why don't you take that back to your parish, and as a parish decide what do you want to do with cameras? I'm not going to say, I don't think I can say everybody has to have their camera on or they get kicked out of the meeting, or nobody should have their camera on, everybody should be. I don't know what the whole issue with cameras on or off should be, but I think if you sit down with parish staff, maybe lifelong formation people, and come up with what makes sense in this situation. Dan, Myra, do you have any suggestions? Or
are we in the questions? Is that? Yes. I'm trying to. Okay, so I did not have my chat.
I just opened it. Yeah.
Okay, so which one are you answering?
All the way up to 10:30. Erica is asking with the camera off issue, and the issue of their anxiety and stating that they have their cameras off during school as well. And those are those one-off issues that, you know, I don't think there can be a pat answer, but something that is reasonable to you, something that is thought about by your parish staff, because you know your parish. The parish, whether they're in Vicariate 1 or Vicariate 6, probably has a big deal to do with it. So think about it as a staff, as a group of people, and come up with a decision that makes sense. I don't think there's anything in our policies that say they have to be on or they can't be on. Is there?
Not that I'm aware of at this time. Okay. But there also is the question about a photo release. Photos are on an individual basis and on an individual incident. So a general release, no, that's not what we do. It's on an individual basis. So that could get very, very cumbersome trying to get those releases. And any release that you get cannot be oral. It must be in writing and then maintained.
Okay.
That's the lawyer in me speaking.
Yeah. Magdalene has a good question or comment about the isolation is getting to families, and there are families who are having mental health issues with their children. How can we help?
I think, Mary Jane, I think that there's a lot of resources that I've been coming across, and I can't cite any just one right now, but there are the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have Kid Smarts and they have Net Smarts, and they're coming out with certain things. Virtus is coming out with bulletins and regarding isolation. This is something that is out there, and it's very real and it's very scary. Yeah. And I don't want to advise, because I don't have a mental health background either. I have a more of a social work and safe and conflict resolution background. But look for the resources. There are a lot out there, and there's some that could be done as a family, you know, taking a walk, looking at nature, staying away from the TV for a while. Really common sense or very simple things. And then there are very real things. If there are mental health issues, consult a counselor, go to Catholic Charities.
Right.
Really look for those kind of resources. So depending there, don't minimize it. Absolutely don't minimize it.
But if
look
you're not a
resources.
mental health professional, don't think you can solve it.
Right,
You know,
and don't diagnose, don't
know your limitations.
Yeah,
You sound like you're having a great deal of trouble. Let me see if I can find something that you could do.
Yeah.
Child Help USA, Child Abuse America, they all have websites, they all have information on COVID and helping that. Unless you are a mental health professional, don't take that problem on. It's really not yours.
realize it's a real factor, and you might,
Yes.
and there's a lot of people are going to be talking about it. Don't minimize it. Don't brush it off and say, I can't talk about this because Mary Jane
Thank
told me
you.
not to.
Right. That's my point, is that I'm not saying don't talk about it. I'm saying don't make it yours. Help find the resource.
It's identifying and referring. That's
Right.
the important
That's the
part.
pastoral way.
Yes. FaceTime with parents and a minor. As long as parents are involved and they're okay with it, fine. Let me scrolling down. If cameras off or allowed during school, then the parent is allowing, the school is allowing child to listen but not be taped. Right. Handled case by case. Thanks, Myra. Any other questions? I really, really believe the concern comes from wanting to do the right thing, and we appreciate that so much. We hear so much of the times things go wrong that it's just good to work with you and help you do the right thing and think about what would be what's the professional way to handle it? How would I want it handled if it were my child, and go from there.
And we're so blessed that your ministry is going forward during this time. It could easily be one of those things that sort of falls off the table, that parents and children have so much going on that they don't feel that they can turn to the church or their faith formation group programs, but they are. And so we're blessed to have you. We just want to make sure that as you are forming these young people, that we're supporting you and that you get what you need from us, but also that you're taking care of yourselves. Because as we are all dealing with this, we want to make sure that you have the resources that you need to do this in the way that you need to.
Really quick, it looks like we have a hand raised. I can't see the name.
Can you do the, while you're looking for it, can you put our office slide back up? It's the next one.
I will. Alma, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, we still can't hear you, Alma.
Oh, hi, I just had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
My question is, I am back and forth as far as teaching the religious program. So my concern is something that I've always done in my previous teachings is I do a lot on one-to-one with my students, always following the requirements. And so I just want to make sure I understand if I'm in it, so I can only do one-to-one if the parent is present on camera, correct?
What are you talking about one-to-one? Is it the lesson itself?
Yeah, for let's say a child, like let's say a child tells me, you know, I need extra help, or can I ask, you know, and I always do offer that, and I always follow the guidelines. So in this situation we're in now, which is remote teaching and learning, what you're saying is I can only offer that with the parent being present, correct?
At least the parent has to be knowledgeable. You might not have to be on camera, but you have to request from the parent that you are having a one-on-one. This is the subject matter, and know that we're going to be doing this. Be
Right.
open and transparent. What grade are we talking?
So I have 13 and above. I always get the older bunch, and the attention span, it's a little lower than the younger kids. You think it'd be the other way around, but they have too many distractions. But I was just wondering if I am asked that, I want to be prepared that I'm still following all the requirements, the guidelines needed, that I'm not, crossing any boundaries.
What's the
or
curriculum?
that I can ask for that.
Yeah. What's the curriculum for that age?
We're doing actually a new one this year. We're offering a new book, and that one is Fusion in the Faith. So that'll be new for us this year.
Okay.
Normally we've done visions.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
what
so
Mary Jane says, making sure that the parents are aware that you're doing this, what I understand to be tutoring, to be giving the one-on-one and such, so that the parent, and that the parent could check in every once in a while and sort of be available, say, okay, I understand that he's going to be on the phone with Amma. So if I walk past it and Amma's not on the screen, then the parent's going to want to ask the child what's going on. I thought Amma was going to be there. So again, it's transparent, it's open, and you're communicating to the parents prior to the session so that there are no surprises.
It might be also helpful to kind of bookend it. That is, have the parent there when you start and have the parent there when the session is ending. Let them call the parent back into the room for you so that we know that there is this context, that the parent is involved, knows what's going on, and we move from there.
Got it. Okay, understand. Thank you so much.
Always think open and transparent when you're trying to come up with those one-off situations. How can I make this safe for me and for them? And effective. We want effective teaching.
Something I just wanted to say before we start to, because we're getting close to our hour. There are a number of materials beyond just the PowerPoint that you saw that are being provided. Please read them. It's important. That just gives you context. And these are the kind of documents you can go back to every now and again just to refresh yourself. This is important material. It is the policy of the diocese. We want you to do it right and not have a problem. But if you think there's something coming up, give us a call.
Yes, don't hesitate to call anybody in OPCY to talk over an issue.
But I want to tell you, we are working remotely. So
right.
If you call our offices, we will not be answering those calls immediately.
I have my phone number my office number is transferred to my office cell. So I don't know how everybody else is doing it, but if the safest way is an email with the question and a contact number back so that person can get back to you.
Right.
And I'm working it the same way, but my response to you would be, you need to talk to people at OPCY.
So you might not want to call Deacon Dan. One final comment. The interim virtual safe environment guidelines, the interim is a little misleading in that we are not actively working on changing this, but this is a new experience. So if you, as the practitioners, as the front line of remote learning, come up with issues or problems, or as things come up, we know we'll hear from you, and those issues may be taken into consideration. So the interim means it's an ongoing, it's a living document. Let's see how this goes. And if in 6 months everybody says, oh my, that's never going to work, then we'll look at it. But it doesn't mean for the time being, or these are going to go away anytime soon. Any other
questions, comments?
Just to
It's fun.
reiterate, this is Clarissa from the Office of Lifelong Faith Formation. If you weren't with us in the beginning, this program is being recorded and will be available in a few days or maybe even early next week since it's about midday Thursday now. You will get a link to a YouTube video as well as the slides that if you haven't downloaded from the chat, we're going to also kind of send a link to that. Last questions, either type it in the chat or raise your hand. But I know that both Mary Jane and Myra are fantastic and very responsive as I've reached out to them a ton for all kinds of questions over the years.
We're here to help. Really,
Yeah.
we mean it.
Yes.